Welcome to Books and the World, brought to you by the Cape Cod Writers Center, helping writers for over 50 years. Our guest today is Susan Santangelo. She's the author of the Baby Boomer Mystery Series. Her latest book, the seventh in the series, is Dieting Can Be Murder. Susan is a member of the Sisters in Crime, International Thriller Writers, and the Cape Cod Writers Center. She also reviews mysteries for Suspense magazine. Susan divides her time between the Gulf Coast of Florida and Cape Cod and shares her life with husband Joe and two very spoiled English Cocker Spaniels named Boomer and Lily. Boomer also serves as the model on the book's covers, and Lily is pictured here on the back. About Susan's latest creation, Lois Winston, who is a USA Today best-selling author, writes, "If you're a fan of Susan Santangelo's humorous Baby Boomer Mystery Series, Dieting Can Be Murder won't disappoint. Carol Andrews needs to lose the weight she gained on her recent second honeymoon. But where Carol goes, dead bodies follow, and such is the case when another dieter in her weight loss group is murdered. Of course, Carol can't help but start nosing around to find the killer. After all, the woman collapsed and died on top of her." So congratulations, Susan. Now you tell us a bit more about yourself.
Well, first of all, nobody's ever collapsed and died on me. Everybody always asks me if I write, because I write in the first person, and everybody always says to me, "Are you talking about your own life?" I'm pleased to say that nobody has ever died on top of me, and hopefully that will not ever happen to me. However, there is a little bit of a autobiographical streak in this book. I'm originally from Connecticut, and I've been writing for years and years and years for magazines and newspapers. I always loved the mystery genre, and I always wanted to write a mystery. And about 10 years ago, I decided, well, I'm not getting any younger, so if I wanted to write a mystery, I might as well start now. My husband had just announced he was going to retire, and I thought, well, this is a born title as far as I'm concerned. So the first book in the series became Retirement Can Be Murder.
So you would say that you do pull from your real life adventures, characters, settings, etc., but you are changing or altering them
you have to
protect the identity.
You have to, because you get yourself into a lot of trouble if you don't disguise them carefully. I read a really fascinating foreword to The Body in the Library by Agatha Christie, in which she explained her process, and I thought that was fascinating because, of course, she to me is the queen of mysteries. And she said that she was unable to take a character from a person that she actually knew. She said that she could not copy somebody, even if she was going to really try to do it. She just couldn't do it. She was not able to create a character based on one particular person. But she would meet somebody who would remind her of something, or she would be in a setting and she would overhear a conversation, and that was sort of the springboard for her imagination to take over. And that's really what it's all about. It's about some sort of thing that triggers in the mind, and my mind works obviously in very odd ways, and from that comes the story. And I was rather pleased to see that I was following along in her footsteps without even realizing it, not to her degree, however.
That's great. So once you have the main cast of characters established, do you find it easier as a writer to create a series with them in it than to, say, start a totally fresh new book with new characters?
I don't think I could ever write another book that did not include Carol and Jim Andrews. They have become such a part of my life. In fact, I have this is a very odd thing to confess on television, but I sort of have Carol sort of sitting over here on your right shoulder, and she's frowning at me, and she's saying, "Don't tell them everything. Just." I kind of feel like they live in a parallel universe. Of course, it's all up here, but they become more real to me the more that I write the books. I don't think I could ever write another series or another standalone book for that matter. A lot of authors I know, actually they write under other names as well, so that their fans are, like romance writers also write mysteries, etc. And the fans of one genre don't necessarily know that it's actually another author's name. I don't think I could ever do that. These are the characters that I've created. They're my friends now most of the time, and I think these are the only books that I could ever possibly write. But I want to go back to one thing that you mentioned about real people. In the fourth book, which is called Class Reunions Can Be Murder, it's based on a high school reunion at a private Catholic girls' school. And the fact that I happened to go to a Catholic school, private school, has nothing to do with how I created it, of course. There is the person who is bumped off is a rather unpopular member of the class. And when I was doing a book talk in Connecticut, in my home area, my very best and dearest friend in the world, we've been friends since we were 13 years old, came up and whispered to me, "I know who it is." And I looked at her and I said, "Who, what is?" And she said, "I know who you killed. You never liked her." This is a true story. And I said, "Oh my God," and she whispered a name in my ear. Now it's true, Pamela, that I never did like her. However, I did not kill her off in a book. And she said to me, "Your secret's safe with me." And then she walked away.
That's what friends are for.
Well, I guess I made it so real. Maybe my subconscious was working. But the woman, I'm glad to say, is still alive and well. So.
Is that where Sister Rose comes from, the Catholic school?
Sister Rose is actually based on a teacher that I had in school, but not a nun. But you know, that background that I had sort of plays a lot into the background of the story as well. Carol and I lead parallel lives in some ways, except for the dead body part.
And what led you to choose the settings for this book of a diet workshop and a thrift shop?
Well, first of all, I spend, as you mentioned, some time in Florida, and there are all those you can eat buffets. And my husband loves to shop with coupons like Jim does, and we don't miss a Sunlight special, a Sunset special, so I was starting to put on a few pounds, and I joined Weight Watchers, I'm happy to say, and I was able to take them off, most of them anyway, and I thought, well, you know, Carol spent her second honeymoon sort of in Florida, and Carol is always worried about her weight. So Carol needs to lose this weight because there's a huge event that's going to happen in her family, and she wants to trim down so she can be looking her best. And I decided to send her to diet camp of some kind or other. And I researched, now I was a Weight Watcher, so I thought I could use the name Waist Watchers as the name of the diet program in Dieting Can Be Murder. And I discovered when I was doing my research that there is a Waist Watchers. I researched all kinds of odd names for diets, and every single one of them I would research and I would find that it was already trademarked.
Wow.
So that's how I finally came up with tummy trimmers, because nobody had thought of that one. And I was so relieved because I didn't know if I was going to have a name for the diet program or not. So tummy trimmers became the name.
Tummy trimmers is such an appropriate name. I think it's
we all want to trim our tummies,
yes,
don't we?
Yes, but of course I just have to throw in here, in each chapter of Susan's novels, she has a little byline there.
Little chapter heading.
Yes, and they're so funny. Some of them are, in this book, "I'm not fat, I'm fluffy." Or, "I'm in the fitness protection program. I'm hiding out from exercise." Exercise? I thought you said accessorize. And they just made me laugh so much, so much. So, as a writer, how much time, I think I asked you that. Yes, we said, it's so funny, we were having a great chat before we came here.
And now we're continuing
Yes, we're continuing it. But do you typically end a story with a lead-in or a hint of the next one, or is that something new?
Well, let's talk a little bit about the chapter
Okay.
headings first, and then
Yes.
I'll tell you my other little secret.
Okay.
The chapter headings started because you know how you get emails from people, and some of them are you just delete without even looking at them, maybe from a friend from years ago or whatever, but it's a forward kind of a thing. And you just go delete, delete, delete. Well, I got one about 10 years ago when I was starting the first book from a high school classmate. And it was a whole series of little funny jokes about retirement. And they made me laugh out loud. And I thought to myself, well, you know, hopefully this is going to be a funny book. So maybe I could take these and put them at the head of each chapter. So that's what I did. And when the book came out in 2009, I think, I can't remember now, I credited her with the chapter headings when the book was published. And she was so thrilled. She couldn't believe it. I said, well, Joan, I said, you're the one who gave me the idea in the first place. And she never knew it. So now readers send me chapter headings. From all over the country, I get emails from people with suggested chapter headings. So I have this whole file on my computer, and whenever I'm starting a new book, I go back and I look and I try to find some that are appropriate for that particular title. So that's how that whole thing started. And sometimes even if people hate the book, they like the chapter headings.
Oh, yes.
So that worked out.
One of my other favorites from this book was, "A thief broke into my house last night. He was looking for money, so I got up and looked with him." And finally, everyone is entitled to my opinion.
And you know, that's so true.
Yes.
That is so true.
Yes.
Now, you asked me earlier, too, about how did I come up with Every Wife Has a Story? We used to watch on A&E Biography years ago, and the theme of that show, the tagline was Every life has a story. So I sort of tweaked it into Every Wife Has a Story. So that's how that whole thing happened. And I was only going to do it for in fact, when I started this, I thought it was going to be one book. I didn't anticipate that I was going to be writing all these books. But apparently I had a latent homicidal streak that has come out after my husband retired, and it just keeps rolling along.
Yeah, we can blame it on the retired husband.
Exactly, exactly. Now, at the end of the 7th book, as you pointed out, there is sort of a cliffhanger because there is a character who appears at the very end of the book that I was not expecting to appear. Now, to explain that to you, when I write a book as you would read a book. I write from the beginning to the end. I don't outline at all. A lot of my other author friends do outline. That's the way that they keep everything in order. We call people like me pantsers, meaning we write from the seat of our pants. I come up with different little possibilities, and I have a little file of possible plot points, and I refer to it now and then. But basically, I let the story unfold as you would turn a page in a book. At the very end of the dieting book, after this momentous event, which is the birth of Carol's and Jim's first grandchild, appears, this really annoying person shows up who ruins Carol is so thrilled to be a grandmother for the first time, and ruins her happiness. And so at the end of the book, that's the end of the book. And I thought, well, now I have this really annoying character who's become part of the family, and what am I going to do with her? You know, so that led me into writing the 8th book. But I hadn't planned on a cliffhanger, but it worked out really well.
So we'll look forward to seeing her in book 8.
But I couldn't kill her. You have to be careful. Couldn't kill her off. Couldn't kill her off. Yet.
The interesting and funny thing about your books is that I feel like you're my neighbor. They are every man, every woman's book, and your life is happening around the story. My
fictional life.
Your fictional. Okay. Because it's so real. It becomes so real. I could see Carol Andrews.
Is she looking at you over here now?
Yes, she is. Yes, she's saying, talk about my daughter becoming, giving me the news that she's expecting, or my son is getting married, or the things are going on, and there are the girlfriends, the steady girlfriends, the nurse, the real estate agent, Nancy, and Claire from Florida, who keep showing up in these stories and comment and help or intercept.
Yeah, and where would we be without our women friends?
Exactly.
You know, our little posse of pals. And in this book, the 3 best friends they've all been friends since childhood. And in fact, there's a scene in the first book which is a lunch among the 4 friends, and Carol is lamenting the fact that Jim is retiring and she doesn't know what she's going to do, etc. And that's actually based on a real lunch that 3 of my best friends and I had many, many years ago. And we were all saying, well, aren't we too young to be thinking about retirement? When in reality, we were not. So that was sort of the springboard for not only the retirement book, but also for Maria's Trattoria, which is a restaurant that is in the books. And so when I'm writing Maria's Trattoria, I'm up in Glastonbury, Connecticut. I'm in this restaurant. It's a little odd, isn't it?
And Maria was a former teacher.
Yeah, Maria was a former teacher, right.
And of course, now above Maria's Trattoria is the Tummy Trimmers.
Is Tummy Trimmers, yes.
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 So the plot is thickening a little here, and seeing who's involved and why.
Yep.
Of course, when you all go down to, Carol goes down with her friends to Maria's, they have to eat.
Of course they have to eat pasta, for
salad.
God's sake.
Right,
Well,
well, you
yeah,
have
yeah,
to eat the
yeah,
pasta,
yeah.
but the salad is calling to you.
Now, I'm going to tell you a funny story about the dieting book, which is there are several ridiculous diets that are listed in this book, and they're actual diets that I found researching on the internet. But my very favorite one is the blue sunglass diet. That is a real, it's actually the blue sunglass diet. And somebody, I believe in Japan, did research and discovered that the color blue distorts food. So that if you are eating off of a blue plate, for instance, the food looks less appetizing than it would if you were eating off of a white plate or a yellow plate. And I don't know why this is. And also they discovered that blue sunglasses distort the color of the food and make it all look gray.
Oh.
So, and I mean, I did not make this up. This is true. So I actually bought a pair of blue sunglasses on Amazon to my research and tried it, and honest to God, it's true. So sometimes when I do book talks about dieting, I wear my blue sunglasses. And everybody always says to me, well, why are you wearing blue sunglasses? And I'll say, well, you'll find out if you read the book.
Oh, that's so interesting, turning the food gray, because color psychology teaches us that, like, if a red plate encourages you to eat more.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
Yes, but blue is the opposite, so that's really interesting.
And the other thing is, if you look at yourself while you're eating, like if you had a
in
mirror.
Yes.
And I don't think I'd want to watch anybody eat, much less myself. You know, but apparently if you do that too, that sort of cuts down on the appetite.
Yes, yes, it will arrest you in your tracks. So, speaking of food, I noticed that in some of the books you've included related recipes.
Yes, yes. Well, the first book had a recipe in it for ice cream bread, which was only 2 ingredients. And the second book now, I decided that I would use a food method for the murder weapon. And the book was complete. And then I got a wonderful call from my pals at the Cape Cod Times, who said, we would like to run a recipe contest for you. So you could have recipes from Cape Cod in the back of the book. And of course, I already had my weapon, my method. So we stopped production of the second book, and the paper ran the contest. And we had so many entries that I included, I think, 12 of them in the back of the book. But I reworked it. Once we decided on the winner, I had to rework the murder to have it play into the actual recipe that won the contest. So that was kind of fun in a way, but it was stressful at the same time.
Oh yes, I can see.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting to see them, as well as some books have little life tips.
Yes.
Such as about relocating or
yes.
handling funerals.
Yes, well, handling funerals. That's a thought. There is actually on Cape Cod a funeral coordinator. Her name is Annie Gibbons, and she lives in Dennis. And she's a funeral concierge, and she will come in. I can't remember the name of her business now, but she will come in and she will do all the arrangements that are so upsetting when a loved one dies, including picking up people at airports, making arrangements for the flowers, all that stuff she'll take care of. So that the family is left without all those annoying little details, like Uncle Harry's stuck at the airport and I can't go get him because I'm doing this, this, and this. It's called Amazing Grace. That's the name of it. And I felt that was kind of the kind of information that should be shared. And the moving quiz, we also have a retirement quiz in the end of the first book. I try to give people takeaways that they can use in their own life. Not how-tos about how to kill people, but you know that.
I thought the relocation questions were very thoughtful.
Good.
That maybe things people should think about those before they up and...
Especially because partners don't always talk to each other. The female may have one particular idea in mind that to her seems so obvious that he obviously knows it too, and in reality he's going down a whole different path. So the quiz, and actually the quiz was something, the moving quiz, that my husband and I came up with together. I asked him for his input into it. So for once we were communicating.
I'm sure it's more than for once.
Well, for twice.
Yeah. What was your experience like publishing? Was it more difficult when you did books 1 and 2, and now an easier process?
The first 4 books were published under our own imprint called Baby Born Mysteries Press. And that happened because we tried to sell it, and we got rave reviews from agents, but they did not think that a publisher would buy it because there was no market for it. And I'm thinking, well, you know, millions and millions of baby boomers all facing retirement. To me, this was a no-brainer. But they didn't think that, they were probably about 10 or 12 years old, these people who were reading the book. They just didn't get the thesis of the whole thing. So we started our own company, small company on Cape Cod called Baby Boomer Mysteries Press, and that's how the first 4 books came out. But in the meantime, Suspense Magazine discovered me and asked me to come on board as a mystery reviewer for them. And they are a national online magazine, and they're really well respected. And I was thrilled to take the job. I'd done reviews for years. And when they decided to, and they're the ones who actually wanted me to go into the ebook as well, because the first book was only published in traditional format. And I resisted the ebook method for a long, long time, but they said to me, you know, you're crazy if you don't go into the ebooks. So they took the books and began to format them for Kindle and Nook and all that. And then they decided to start their own book publishing arm called Suspense Publishing, and they offered me a contract for the 5th book. So now all the other succeeding books have come out being published by them.
Oh, wonderful.
But I was just fortunate because it's very, very hard these days to break into publishing. There's
So I hear.
there's so many people who are really, really excellent writers, and they may not have the hook that a certain publisher is looking for. The books that I write are called cozy mysteries, and by that it is meant, it's the kind of book that when you read it, it's not going to keep you up awake at night, worried. You're not going to be afraid to close your eyes that you're going to have a nightmare. And the themes for those these days are, there's usually a food theme of some kind, a caterer, somebody who's returned home after a failed marriage and hooks up with their high school boyfriend, and he's a cop. And there's basic themes that are running through these books. There are no books really about a husband and a wife. Not since Mr. and Mrs. North years ago, and of course Tommy and Tuppence, which was one of Agatha Christie's shorter series. But there are not a lot of books about husbands and wives, and so that's the kind of book that I decided that I was going to write. And it's worked out because I get emails from all over the world from people saying, "You're writing my life." I did a talk at a library a couple of years ago, and I was sitting downstairs, and one of the women came up to me and she said to me, "You know my husband." And I said, "Oh, did I go to school with him?" And she said, "No, you write about him in the books." But I honestly thought it was somebody I went to school with, but it wasn't.
Well, that's what I meant when your books really hit a chord. I think people would really enjoy reading these because not only are they so crazy funny, but they keep you guessing. They do keep you guessing, because typically if I'm watching a movie, I can, 2/3 through, I can start saying, I know how this is going to end, and my husband is tired of that. But
don't spoil it for me after all.
Yeah, these books are just, they keep you guessing. But I love all the details going on around them, around the Carol Andrews, that are part of daily life. And the dogs.
Oh, the
my
dogs.
Goodness. The dogs are communicating with their soulful eyes and their looks and their humps.
Yeah, Lucy and Ethel.
Yes.
They're really the 2 primary characters in the book, and they've become much more important as the series has progressed. And Lucy's pretty much taken over a lot of it. And people will write to me and say, "Well, Dog would not do that." And I say, "Well, this is fiction, folks. This is not real life. This is fiction."
But people who are very in tune with their dogs do believe them.
Yes.
And I mean, we've raised golden retrievers, and they were like people.
Yeah.
And they did people-like things.
Absolutely.
That's which would shock some.
And they're a heck of a lot easier to get along with than a lot of people, right?
That's true. That's true. So I can really see people, especially the Cape Cod readers, enjoying these books.
And one of them does take place on Nantucket. The
And which
3rd
one is
book,
that?
Marriage Can Be Murder, is a
Oh.
destination wedding on Nantucket for the daughter and her fiance. I can kill people anywhere. I'm easy, you know, but only 1 body per book. I can't do more than 1, because it's not easy to think up a way to kill somebody that's funny.
And by the way, Carol's books are available on her website, which is babyboomermysteries.com, at amazon.com, and in your local libraries. I was pleased to find several of them. So, Okay, I wanted to ask you, while we still have some time, your characters, about some of them. Lori Tedesco of the Tummy Trimmers.
Oh, Lori, yes.
Yes.
What a devil she was. Oh, God. Yes, that's not based on anybody. That's not based on anybody, nor is the sister. But and actually, the woman that dies is based on someone, though, that I met walking on a beach in Florida.
Really?
And she would always walk. She was a woman in her late 70s, I would say, and she wore huge, huge sunglasses, and I would see her every single morning walking. And she walked, and she always wore flip-flops, which I thought was fascinating, as opposed
As
to
a walker, right?
Yeah, but she could really walk fast. So I sort of based Pat on her. But Lori Tedesco wasn't really based on anybody that I know. But the other thing we talked about in our pre-talk was about the thrift shop, and thrift shops are very important in my life. I volunteered at a thrift shop in Florida for a local hospital there, and bargains galore. And I had to have a thrift shop in my books.
And you never know what will turn up.
You never know what's
or
going to turn
happen
up.
in a thrift shop.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that Susan's latest book,
brand
which brand new, will be coming out July 24th.
It's called In-Laws Can Be Murder. No comments, please. I'm so
No.
afraid my family's going to think it's about somebody that's in the family. But this really does pick up from the end of the seventh book with the annoying character who popped in unexpectedly, and what happens when she invades Carol and Jim's house.
Well, I can't wait to get in on that one now. I have a lot of reading to catch up on. Truly, truly an enjoyable book.
Thank
Dieting
you.
Can Be
Thank
Murder.
you.
And I'm sure the rest of the series is just as fascinating. I've been reading snippets of them, so I suggest everybody gets out there and finds a
thank you.
copy.
Thank you.
You'll laugh your head off, you really will. And what more do we need today? So thank you, Susan.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm Pamela Kirinali, representing the Cape Cod Writers Group and Books of the World. Books.